On October 25, 1976, Ralph Rossum, a university professor in Claremont, California, who taught constitutional law, and his wife, Constance, welcomed the happiest day of their lives. Constance had just given birth to their first child, a baby girl named Kristin. Over the next few years, two younger brothers, Brendan and Pierce, would join the family, completing what seemed to be a picture-perfect household. Thanks to their social standing and professional success, Ralph and Constance were able to provide their children with a comfortable, privileged upbringing. They wanted their kids to achieve the same success, or even surpass it. From a very young age, Constance took a leading role in Kristin's education, guiding her carefully and nurturing her talents. Kristin showed extraordinary promise. She became deeply passionate about ballet and fashion modeling, showing remarkable skill in both. Ballet, however, captured her heart completely, a form of art that allowed her to express emotion through movement. Despite her young age, she demonstrated such maturity and ability that she began performing publicly, standing out even among professionals. Her teachers and mentors agreed that Kristin's talent could take her to the world's greatest stages, perhaps the Paris Opera, Milan's La Scala, or even the Bolshoi Ballet in Moscow. She was on track for a brilliant career, but life, as it often does, took a cruel turn. During a routine rehearsal, Kristin severely injured her ankle, tearing multiple ligaments. The diagnosis was devastating. She would never fully recover, and her days as a dancer were over. Her dreams shattered overnight. The loss plunged her into deep depression. As she struggled to cope, Kristin began experimenting with drugs and alcohol, seeking escape from her pain. By her final year of high school, she was addicted, using her parents' money to fund her habit. When Ralph and Constance discovered what was happening, their once-loving household was torn apart by arguments and mistrust. Police were even called to the home more than once as tensions escalated. Despite everything, her parents refused to abandon her. They stood by Kristin through her darkest moments, hoping she would recover. Gradually, after months of turmoil, the chaos began to quiet. In 1994, a flicker of hope appeared. Kristin decided to go to college, determined to build a new life. If she could no longer dance, she could still succeed in another field. Yet her mental health remained fragile. Though she seemed better, her emotions were unpredictable, swinging between optimism and despair. One day, overwhelmed by hopelessness, Kristin attempted to take her own life. Thankfully, she was found and saved in time, but it was clear that she had reached the lowest point imaginable. To help her heal, her family encouraged her to take some time away. Kristin decided to travel to Tijuana, Mexico, hoping a change of environment might bring peace. By coincidence, Greg de Villers, a 22-year-old man, was also visiting Tijuana with his brothers. When their paths crossed, something clicked instantly. They spent several days together, and a powerful connection formed, a sense of comfort neither had felt before. When they returned to the U.S., they began seeing each other regularly, and soon, Kristin moved in with Greg. Greg shared an apartment with one of his brothers and a close friend. Before moving in, Kristin was open about her past, her depression, her addiction, and her ongoing struggle to stay clean. Greg listened without judgment. He knew the dangers of drugs and understood the challenges ahead, but he was deeply in love and determined to help her recover. Soon after Kristin moved in, however, small items began disappearing. Cash, jewelry, even checks. Suspicion quickly fell on her. Kristin denied any involvement, but the truth surfaced when the missing items were discovered in one of her bags. The roommates were furious. Greg's brother was so angry that he moved out, declaring he could no longer live with someone he didn't trust. Greg, though disappointed, didn't abandon Kristin. He knew that theft was often a symptom of addiction, not simple malice. He stayed by her side, helping her through withdrawal and relapse. His unwavering support began to pay off. Over the following months, Kristin managed to detox completely. She returned to school, enrolling at San Diego State University, where she excelled academically, one of the best in her class. By 1998, she graduated with honors. That same year, she was hired as a toxicologist at the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office, a prestigious and promising position. For the first time in years, her life seemed stable. She had a good job, a loving partner, and a bright future ahead. Greg, seeing how far she had come, decided to take the next step. He proposed, asking Kristin to marry him. She said yes, overwhelmed with joy. After years of pain and struggle, she finally had everything she had ever wanted. But just as she was preparing for what should have been the happiest day of her life, something inside her began to change. Anxiety crept in, a dark, consuming fear that slowly took hold of her mind and would soon lead her down a far more tragic path. As the wedding day approached, Kristin began having doubts about committing herself for life. Nervous and anxious, she turned to her mother for advice. Constance reassured her daughter, explaining that such feelings were normal in the weeks leading up to a wedding. She had felt the same herself. Her calm and wise words comforted Kristin, who went ahead with the ceremony. On June 5, 1999, the couple celebrated their marriage, surrounded by friends and family. Kristin and Greg de Villers appeared to be radiantly happy. The earlier anxieties seemed to have faded, at least on the surface. But after some time, Kristin began confiding in close friends that she felt emotionally trapped in her marriage. She questioned whether marrying Greg had been the right decision. These growing doubts coincided with her increasingly close relationship with Dr. Michael Robertson, one of her colleagues at the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office. Michael and Kristin often flirted openly at work, enough to make others uncomfortable. While most co-workers weren't certain whether a full-blown affair was happening, they couldn't ignore the signs. Long lunches alone, private moments that seemed far too intimate for simple co-workers. In truth, Kristin and Michael were having an affair, betraying their respective partners. At the same time, Kristin relapsed into her old habits. She began using drugs again, something that was alarmingly easy for her to do, since one of her professional responsibilities was logging and storing confiscated narcotics. All she had to do was take what she wanted from the evidence locker, and she did. Michael found out, but instead of reporting her as required by protocol, he covered for her, destroying or hiding evidence to protect her. Greg, meanwhile, remained completely unaware. He still trusted his wife unconditionally. But the truth came out when he accidentally discovered a love letter from Michael in Kristin's bag. A furious argument followed. Greg was devastated. After everything he had done for her, after all the support he had given through her darkest times, she had betrayed him. Even worse, he realized she had started using drugs again. Overwhelmed with anger, Greg threatened to expose everything, to report Kristin and Michael to their superiors. The consequences would be catastrophic. Both could lose their jobs and face criminal charges for mishandling controlled substances. The argument stretched late into the night, until both were exhausted. They agreed to talk again the next day. 2 days later, on November 6th, 2000, Greg did not show up for work. His boss received a message, a text from Kristin, saying Greg wasn't feeling well and would stay home. The boss tried calling the couple twice, at 10 a.m. and again at noon, but no one answered. That morning, Kristin had woken up next to Greg, who she said didn't look well. Given their recent fight, she assumed it was just stress or exhaustion. But as the morning went on, his condition worsened. He became dizzy and nearly unconscious. Kristin sent the text to his boss to excuse him, and then left for work herself, arriving at the medical examiner's office as usual. Witnesses saw her chatting with Michael Robertson that morning. At lunchtime, she returned home to check on Greg. He still looked unwell, sluggish, and pale. She claimed he had been taking antidepressants, which might explain it. After a short visit, she went back to finish her workday. Kristin left the office around 5 p.m., saying she wanted to stop by some shops before going home. She didn't return until around 7:30 p.m. When she entered the bedroom, Greg appeared to be asleep on the bed. Assuming it was the effect of his medication, she kissed him on the forehead and went to take a long bath. Around 9 p.m., Kristin climbed into bed beside him and realized that his skin was cold. Panic set in. She touched his arm, no response. She shook him, called his name, nothing. At 9:20 p.m., she dialed 911, telling the operator that she had just found her husband unconscious in bed. The dispatcher instructed her to move his body to the floor and begin CPR until help arrived. When paramedics entered the home, they found Greg's lifeless body on the bed, surrounded by rose petals. Nearby was an open diary belonging to Kristin, turned to a page where she had written about her plan to leave her husband. Greg was rushed to the hospital, but was pronounced dead on arrival. When questioned by medics, Kristin said Greg didn't use illegal drugs. He was firmly against them. Moments later, she added that he had been taking psychoactive medications and antidepressants, contradicting herself. Police arrived at the couple's home soon after. Kristin told them that the rose petals had been Greg's symbolic farewell gesture, representing the end of their relationship, like a dying flower. At first glance, the scene looked like a suicide, a heartbroken man taking his own life after discovering his wife's infidelity. The autopsy appeared to support that theory. Greg's body contained high levels of narcotic substances. The official conclusion was that he had overdosed intentionally. Greg's family, however, was not convinced. His parents insisted he would never take drugs or harm himself. His brother Jerome was particularly determined. He believed Greg had been murdered and that Kristin was responsible. Jerome began recording his phone calls with her, collecting anything that might hint at guilt. He also pressed the police to reopen the investigation. His persistence paid off. Detectives agreed to re-examine the case. During their review, they noticed a crucial detail. Greg's body had been sent for autopsy to the San Diego County Medical Examiner's office, the very place where Kristin worked. And the person who had supervised the examination was Dr. Michael Robertson, her secret lover. That discovery changed everything. Investigators soon discovered that just hours after Greg's death, Kristin had authorized organ donation and begun arranging for his cremation. Her swift, almost procedural efficiency deeply alarmed the police. It was as if she had anticipated his death. They also reviewed the toxicology report prepared under Dr. Michael Robertson's supervision. While the report confirmed traces of psychoactive substances, one particular drug stood out. Its concentration was 7 times the lethal limit. That finding raised disturbing questions. A private laboratory in Los Angeles later conducted its own analysis and confirmed the presence of this rare compound in Greg's system. But how had the San Diego Medical Examiner's office, where Kristin worked, missed it? The answer soon became clear. The substance in question was so uncommon and tightly controlled that tests for it weren't automatically performed unless specifically requested. Still, the presence of the drug made no sense. In such a dose, it would have killed Greg almost instantly. Yet Kristin claimed he had been conscious and groggy for much of the day. Moreover, fluid was found in Greg's lungs, suggesting he had lost consciousness multiple times before dying. How could he have carefully scattered rose petals around the bed before peacefully lying down to sleep, as Kristin suggested? And if he had truly taken the drug himself, why was there no vial or bottle anywhere in the apartment? Paramedics who responded that night added more inconsistencies. They said it took them less than 3 minutes to reach the house after Kristin's 911 call. Yet when they arrived, she was in another room, not performing CPR. There were no chest compression marks on Greg's torso, indicating she hadn't even tried to revive him. Police reviewed the recording of the emergency call and noticed that at no point could they hear Kristin performing CPR. Only her voice. Then came another troubling clue. One of the officers who had been present both at the scene and later at the hospital testified that a man had arrived to visit Kristin. She had hugged him in front of everyone. That man was Dr. Michael Robertson. Detectives immediately searched both Kristin's and Michael's offices, as well as the medical storage room at the San Diego County Medical Examiner's office. The audit revealed that several controlled substances were missing. When questioned, Robertson admitted that he had covered up Kristin's theft of narcotics to protect her, but denied any knowledge of the missing substances related to Greg's death. A month later, both Kristin Rossum and Michael Robertson were fired for misconduct. But the investigation didn't stop there. Digital forensics experts examined their work computers, uncovering hundreds of romantic emails and, more importantly, messages discussing the very same drug found in Greg's body. Investigators also discovered that the lovers had recently attended a seminar on the compound effects, funded by their employer. On the day of Greg's death, Kristin had gone shopping. She paid in cash, making it nearly impossible to trace her purchases, except for one mistake. Before paying, she had scanned her store loyalty card, and the system automatically logged her items. Among them was a single red rose. A chilling coincidence. Meanwhile, Robertson, not yet charged, quietly fled to Australia, claiming he needed to care for his ailing mother. More than 7 months later, on June 25, 2001, Kristin Rossum was arrested and charged with the murder of her husband, Greg de Villers. She maintained her innocence, insisting Greg had taken his own life using drugs he had secretly obtained. The jury didn't believe her. After weeks of testimony, they found Kristin Rossum guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced her to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. As for Michael Robertson, he never returned to the United States. A warrant for his arrest was issued, identifying him as a potential accomplice, but Australia refused to extradite him. The full truth of his involvement may never be known. The case remains one of the most shocking examples of love, betrayal, and calculated murder, made even more tragic by the fact that Greg had once saved Kristin from the very darkness that ultimately consumed her. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, check out more true crime cases on the channel. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon so you never miss a new episode. Stay safe, and see you next time.